Welcome to week 3 of the Split Pouch Sew Along. I'm Carolyn, and I'm so glad that you are here to join me this week. This week I made 3 pouches, and I'm very excited about them. Last week I feel like my choices were driven by the recipients, people who I was thinking about giving gifts to, so my niece and then a friend. This week I was completely motivated by the materials that I'm using. So after doing a little bit of a deep dive last week, looking at some new zippers, that was definitely inspired by seeing some of the supplies that you were using, I found these really neat vinyls and I ordered a few to try. So these are all kind of how they came on the roll. And there is one that has this like hologram-ish shimmer. That's pretty cool. That's this one. And then I also had this one, which is like I don't know, it came in really bright, which I really like, this like fluorescent red-orange color. And then there's this one, which is just a checkerboard, which is pretty cool. I haven't used this one yet, but I'm excited to give it a try. So anyway, I picked up these supplies, and then I also had some wax canvas that I picked up at a quilt shop earlier this year. And then I have this waxed canvas that I picked up at the Modern Sewist down in Sarasota earlier this year. So I've been eager to put this into a project. It has such a nice texture. So anyway, this was definitely my inspiration this week. Let's take a look at the pouches that I made. First up is this one. I don't know, it's really fun. So this one, I used this transparent neon fluorescent red-orange vinyl that I picked up. And as you can see, this is what I've made. So working with vinyl is totally different than working with fabric. Fabric is very malleable. It is made from fibers that are woven together. And so when you weave those fabrics together, you get a lot of really cool qualities, like they stretch, they're flexible. The vinyl is basically plastic. So it is, it is flexible in its own ways, but when it comes to manipulating it, it's totally different than fabric. So, and also you don't have to worry about your edges unraveling. So there are quite a few things that are different about working with vinyl. And so one thing with this pouch is that it's clear. I wanted to take advantage of the fact that this material is transparent. So I liked the idea of making a pouch that you could see into. You can see through it. With that, I decided not to use a lining. So this is just a single layer of vinyl that I sewed to the zipper, and then on the inside, I covered those seams with fabric like that. I also added a label to this one, and to be honest, I forgot to add the label while I sewed in the zipper. Like in last week's, I added the label to the zipper. This one I decided to add it here when I was sewing in the this final seam and putting on the binding. And so I used this label from Kylie and the Machine, that just says handmade. And knowing that this was going to be a see-through pouch, I knew that I could use it in this way because you'd be able to see it, which I think is kind of a fun effect. So let's see. Another thing that I had to think about with this one, I wasn't using a lining, so I was just sewing one layer to the zipper, and I ended up sewing it to the zipper kind of in the same way, actually exactly in the same way that you would install it if you were using fabric. But I did consider adding the zipper on top of the vinyl, just because vinyl, it's not going to ravel. And definitely with some decorative zippers that have a pretty design or like a pretty edge, some of those that have eyelets on the sides, this could be a great way to use it because you could just sew the vinyl underneath that zipper. So I considered doing that, but in the end, I installed it the same. I used a bright orange thread. I installed my snaps. They are red. I did cloth tabs here on the sides. And I don't know, I just think it's kind of fun. Something else that I didn't do. Okay, well, let's talk about the tips for sewing with vinyl. First of all, when you're sewing with vinyl, every punch with the needle, that's going to be a permanent hole. So you want to be careful with how many times you sew it. And also it makes sense to lengthen your stitch length. So I jumped up to a 3.0 millimeter stitch length that just perforates it less. And I also used a polyester thread. So I really like the Gutermann Mara thread, but in using the polyester thread, that's just a much stronger thread. And since I'm using a longer stitch length, I just wanted that extra strength from the thread. And since I'm using vinyl, the polyester kind of matches, the polyester thread matches that a little bit better. So in the regular pouches, like I have this one from last week, I end up top stitching kind of different parts of it where it's going to fold. In this pouch, I didn't want to do any extra top stitching over just the regular parts because you don't need it. And also then you're perforating that plastic. And so that might make the plastic more likely to break or tear. So I just left it one piece. I didn't add any extra top stitching here. I also used a few different supplies that are really helpful. So first of all is a Teflon foot. So a Teflon foot is basically a foot that allows the fabric to glide, or the vinyl to glide under it more easily. A normal sewing foot might get stuck, might want to stick to it. So the Teflon foot allows that fabric to glide through, or the vinyl to glide through much more easily. So I used a Teflon foot when I was making this. I also used Wonder Clips, and I like using these little ones that are very narrow for a project like this. And the reason I use these instead of sewing pins is that the sewing pins are going to leave a hole in the vinyl. And also they'd be very, I don't know, kind of tricky to use on the vinyl because it's not too thick. It is easy to work with, or relatively easy to work with. There is an adjustment in getting used to working with it. But using a Wonder Clip is a much better, it's a much easier way to hold the layers together when you need to. I also used a stiletto. So as I was working at the machine, I used this to help guide my seam through the machine if there was a bulk, anything like that. I do like this stiletto for a project like this. It has like a coating of rubber, which you can see wore off actually pretty soon after getting it, but there are a bunch of different types of stilettos. I like that this one has a relatively dull point because I don't want to puncture the vinyl as I'm using it. So that's why I liked using this type of stiletto. That's mainly, let's see, those are the supplies I used for the vinyl. Another thing to keep in mind when you're working with the vinyl is just to take your time. I reminded myself of this. It's not a material that I am used to working with, and this was my first time making one of these pouches with vinyl. So give yourself time and grace, and you'll get through it. You take it one step at a time. I will say that the last step, when you turn everything right side out for this pouch, that was pretty tricky with the vinyl. The vinyl just wanted to kind of stick together. It's very like thick and kind of bulky, but I did eventually get it turned and it didn't really leave any marks in the vinyl. So I think that this particular vinyl, it seems fairly resilient, which is kind of cool. So anyway, it was a fun exploration. I love how bright and colorful this pouch is. It's very exuberant. The second pouch that I made this week is this one. It is made out of waxed canvas. I love working with waxed canvas. If you haven't worked with it before, definitely give it a try. It is a nice durable and waterproof fabric that has many quality, like since it's fabric, this is a canvas that's then coated with a wax, the sewing properties are very similar with the addition of the wax being there. And so this one, open it up and you can see that. I added a label here on the inside there, so that was kind of fun. I liked that the lavender kind of coordinated with the zipper and then the snaps that I chose. This pouch is a really good example of addition the supplies that you have on hand. I knew I wanted to use this wax canvas. And then I pretty quickly realized I wanted to use this fabric for the lining. And when I was cutting out this is a side note, when I was cutting out the lining, I noticed that it is a little bit see-through because this is a light color canvas, but I decided that that's okay. I could have used a solid fabric, I could have used a lighter fabric so that you wouldn't be able to see a little bit of that fabric underneath through it, but I decided I kind of liked the effect. But back to the auditioning thing. I pulled my lining, so I pulled my exterior fabric first, then I pulled my lining, and then I started to look at my zipper color options. And after laying everything out, there was something about this lavender with the yellow that I just really liked. It's very colorful, the lavender, I don't know, it's just really pretty. I don't know if it looks too much like an Easter egg, but there's something that I really like about it. So I went with the lavender zipper just because it was an unexpected surprise. And then I matched my snaps to that as well. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with this pouch. If you are using waxed canvas, you don't need to worry about an interfacing. You could interface your lining, but for me, this is plenty of stability. The waxed canvas gives it a really good structure, and I didn't want any extra. I didn't feel like I needed any extra stabilizer on the lining fabric. One tip, I learned this from Anna Graham. She does a lot with waxed canvas, but when you work with waxed canvas, and you can see it a little bit here, it can get some creases and marks just as you're manipulating it while you're making it. If you want to redistribute that wax, you can take a hairdryer, and the heat of the hairdryer will help kind of remelt that wax, and then help it kind of resettle. So it just smooths out the look a little bit. This one didn't get too, I mean, you can see some of those marks here. It's very minor. You'll see more of that with use, and over time, it'll just get like more kind of worked in. And that's one of the nice, like, long-term effects of wax, is that it really gets this nice lived-in look and feel. But that's a tip if you did want to kind of clean that up before you were to give it as a gift or whatever. You can always use that hairdryer. When working with waxed canvas, I used some of the same tools that I used with the vinyl. I used my Teflon foot, I used a polyester thread, I used the Wonder Clips. The stiletto definitely came in handy, but I also used this. I was looking for a way to mark my fabric, and I didn't really want to mark it with a marking pin or anything like that, but I realized I have this, it scores your fabric. I think it's for like garment making. I've never used it for that. I don't really know where this came from, but any kind of scoring tool. Actually, I was looking for a hair marker. Those are really handy. But I couldn't I found this before I found my hair marker, so this is what I used. And you can run it along your ruler, along where you want to do the top stitching, and it leaves a nice mark that then you stitch over and you don't see it. So this is a handy tool for working with waxed canvas, if you're wanting to mark your waxed canvas. Another tool that I like to use when I'm using waxed canvas is a seam roller. And this is just really nice when you need to give it a press. With waxed canvas, you don't want to use your iron because that's going to melt the wax and get all of your iron. It's going to be a mess. So you really don't want to press it that way, but you can use a seam roller. So for example, when I use this when after I've installed the zipper and I want to press this seam out, I use the seam roller, and it makes for a really nice crisp edge. And so you can see that here on this scrap. You know, you just fold it and you can use that seam roller to get a very nice press. I love using a seam roller for the wax canvas. It also scores it if you need to leave a mark, if that would be helpful. But also I use this, so you can see, here's how that seam wheel works. So especially with a ruler, you can get it nice and straight. Looks pretty good. Pouch number 3 is this one, and here I am using vinyl. I'm using this kind of holographic clear vinyl that I picked up. It is really fun. And with this one, I didn't really want to make a clear bag. I wanted to layer this with a print fabric. And at first I thought it would be really fun to put a floral in here. And I did audition this one. And what's nice is that I laid it on here and just kind of held it up like this. And I don't know if it's something about the scale, but it just didn't totally scratch the itch that I was looking to do with this one. So then after auditioning a few other fabrics, I went to this space fabric that's by Karen Nyberg. I held it on there and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool, because These prints, this fabric line is all, they're all aerial views of stuff that, photographs that Karen took from space. And they have this really cool texture, cool color. I've made a jumpsuit with it. I used this fabric in the last quilt along for my pine project, and my bow project. And here I just thought, it's perfect. I love how this layer with the holographic vinyl, it just gives it that much more depth and texture and fun. So I loved this. And then I paired it with one of my prints on the inside. So I'll show you how it turned out. Of course, I could have used that vinyl clear. Maybe I will make a clear one in the future. But here we are. And I used scraps from my first pouch here for the zipper tabs. So I open it up, and on the inside is one of my prints. Oh, and I put this label here on the inside too, which is pretty cool. And it says, "You are my sunshine," which, I don't know, sunshine with the space fabric with the holographic vinyl just seemed to really fit. So anyway, this one's super fun. So with this one, in some ways it's a little more forgiving because it's not clear. So my seams end up getting hidden and covered by my lining fabrics. You are still working with the vinyl, so you may want to use the Teflon foot. You definitely want to use the Wonder clips. The stiletto comes in really handy. What else? Polyester thread, definitely use that. I didn't do any top stitching here, even though I have multiple layers. I just didn't want to puncture through that vinyl any more than I had to, and especially at points of bending and folding while in use. I do have a couple of puckers that came out on this one. I think that, I could have gone back and been fussy to fix that, but it's fine. I don't think anyone's really going to notice. This side ended up being pretty clean. I think that I was having trouble with controlling all of those layers because you've got your lining fabric, the exterior fabric, so I've got the space fabric, my lining fabric, and then the vinyl that's on the outside. And so you've got all of those layers kind of sandwiched together, and the fabric is wanting to shift a little bit. It's not really gripping to this vinyl, and then the vinyl's wanting to it doesn't want to be manipulated. It's staying its shape basically. So that part can be a little bit tricky, but I don't think that anyone's really going to notice that. I think it looks really cute. And probably with practice, I'll get a better feel for how to not have that issue in the future. So not a big deal. So otherwise, I thought I would share just another tip, another tool for something that I like to use when I'm cutting out projects like this. So with the vinyl and even with the wax canvas, I like using a pattern weight for, I lay out the vinyl, I lay out my pattern piece, and then I really love this set of pattern weights that it's from Picking Daisies. I am not sure if they still sell them, but if they do, I will pop a link to that below, or I'll try to find something that's kind of comparable. But you could use washers, washer discs. You could use anything weighty. I love these because it's a set of 4. But what I will do, and this was really handy when working with the vinyl. So let's say I've got this one. And first of all, it wants to curl. So these pattern weights are really handy for that. So I'd roll it out on my cutting mat. Let me get out one of these other ones. And then I'd use this, and then I'd use my ruler and cut the size that I needed, and then I'd put the template on top, moving the pattern weights around so I could get around the shape that I needed to cut. So these will come in really handy for something like this. I should say that this vinyl is only, I think it might be 12 inches wide. So that dictated I won't make a large size pouch out of the vinyl just because it's not long enough. If I did want to make a large size, I just need to source some wider vinyl. So it's something to think about. So otherwise, let me know what you think. I hope that it's been a fun week for you. It's been such a delight to see your projects. Don't forget, you can post them on Instagram using the hashtag #SplitPouchSAL for so long. You can follow along on the blog or on my newsletter. All of the sign up for that info is below. Leave a comment, let me know what you think. And yeah, have a great week, and I'm excited to see you next time.